Well, good morning. Very, very happy Monday to everyone, and welcome to the John Knetera Show on YouTube. And of course, we're streaming live on Facebook as well. You can follow me at John Knetera on Facebook at John Knetera, and on X at Coach Knetera 44. And if you're just tuning in for the very, very first time, thank you very much, and would certainly appreciate you to subscribe to our program and like it. And we're here each and every Monday and Friday at 10 o'clock. We got a fun weekend to recap. Two of the three Division I basketball teams won over the weekend. USD continues to struggle, but we got a lot of baseball today. And we're going to get right to our first guest. And this guy, I've got so much respect for this man. As a kid growing up in San Diego, listening to him call ball games, giving sports. Just a well-rounded man, and he continues to get out and get to Padre games, Aztec games, and he's just a wealth of knowledge, and really, I think one of the great sports figures in the history of San Diego. Bob Chandler joins me on the John Knetera Show. And Mr. Chandler, good morning, and how are you?
If it's, this forum.
Well, I hope I'm not taking you away from your golf game today.
No, not playing this week until Thursday.
Okay, well, I'm glad we were able to get you in. Hey, Bob, before, and this is for you and me and guys and girls that love baseball, this is the fun time of the year because everybody goes to spring training, thinks their team is going to be 162-0 and roll through the playoffs and win the World Series. But this is such a fun time of year for all of us that love baseball.
Mike Shildt said something on the opening day when the pitchers and catchers reported. He said, if this isn't the greatest day of the year, it's one of them. And I love that attitude because I sort of feel that way myself when baseball begins. It's like all is right with the world again.
Hey, Bob, let me ask you this, and I want to get into, and you know me, and you know me well enough. I like to talk about what goes on, on the athletic field, but I have to ask you right off because you've been a part of Padre baseball since even before they became a major league ball club, and you've seen the trials and tribulations of ownership here in San Diego. Some good owners, some bad owners, some that should have probably never had the ball club. But give me your thoughts on what's going on right now. The fight between Sheil Seidler and the family of her deceased husband, because I don't know how long it's going to take. I think from my standpoint, it's just sad. But, your thoughts on this and where you think it may be headed.
The word you just used, sad, that's how I view it. I mean, there's nothing about this that's good that I can see. I don't know the ins and outs. I don't know what kind of fraud the brothers may have done to make Sheil Seidler feel that way and file her suit. But it can't be good. And whether it's had an effect on the ball club and on AJ Preller and who he can acquire, I honestly don't know. This is a team that, other than getting that free agent Kasaki, that would have been great. Whether the lawsuit had any effect on Padres' ability to sign him or not, I don't know. It looked like they were one of the final three teams. I don't think anybody is surprised that the Dodgers ended up getting him, and I'm sure that the commissioner's office and others are not unhappy with that because they're opening the season with the Dodgers in Japan, and having Kawasaki there, to pitch one of those games is probably good overall for baseball as the commissioner would look at it, but it's not good for the Padres as I see it.
Well, let me ask you this, and I don't know when they're going to go to court. I don't know when there's going to be a resolution, but with this cloud hanging over the franchise, you've got people in the front office, and they're only human, and they may be on this side of the fence or that side of the fence. And well, I wonder what's going on in the offices when people walk in each and every morning right now.
Yeah, I'm not there every day now, so I don't really know. Some have said that they've been told not to talk about the issue. It's got to be very sensitive. But the Padres will be judged by, what they do on the field, and the owners and the people behind the scenes. Other than, my gosh, Peter Seidler, he was so involved. So was John Moores originally when he came, and Ray Kroc was intimately involved when he bought the team. They've had a lot of interesting owners, and this current ownership group. When Peter was there, he I think was a feel good person for the city of San Diego. He would, when he kept buying all these terrific free agents to play for the Padres, he said, "We're San Diego. We can do anything. We're not intimidated," and it kind of made you feel good about Peter and the Padres and their approach. Maybe they got some contracts that they'd like to do over again. Maybe not, but they have some really good players. And any team with Fernando Tatis Jr. on it has a chance to be really good.
Oh, we're going to get to Fernando here in a minute, but I have to be honest. I kind of went into the offseason a little bitter because the Padres they blew a golden opportunity. They were up, they were dominating the Dodgers. They're up 2-1, and all of a sudden, they won that game here in San Diego, and they scored a bunch of runs early, didn't score the remainder of that game, and then they got shut out 2 games in a row after that. And man, they had the Dodgers right where they wanted them, and they couldn't close them out.
No, they couldn't. And in my opinion, and I wouldn't have said this in any of their previous 54 seasons, but excuse me, I thought they were the best team in the playoffs, and I thought they had a great chance. But as you know, in baseball, the best team doesn't always win. Especially in a short series like that, 3 out of 5. But then the Padres had knocked the Dodgers out a couple of years ago, and the Dodgers were a much better team. So you never know. It's baseball, and it's fun, and you can't script it. And the best team on paper doesn't always win, and the Dodgers are certainly the best team on paper going into this year. But we'll see.
Bob, I've heard a lot of grumbling from Padre fans all off season. And, we knew the Padres had some budget constraints. What they were doing was probably, without a doubt, not sustainable. But Peter Seidler wanted to deliver a winner. And I think the man also realized that he may not be here all that long. And he wanted to see it in his lifetime, and he did everything humanly possible from his standpoint to try to bring a winner and bring a World Series so we could have that parade down on Harbor Boulevard. It didn't happen. And now they've got to kind of, reassess what they're doing, how they're doing it. They may not be able to, trade off all their farm system. They got to rebuild that, obviously. But we still have a really good ball club. No, we're not the Dodgers. And we may not even be the Arizona Diamondbacks. And we may finish in 3rd place, but I think this will be a playoff team. I would be surprised if this is not a playoff team.
Yeah. The Diamondbacks ended up in the World Series just 2 years ago. And last year, they had made some moves in the offseason, and people predicted them to do even better last year than they had done the season before. And it didn't happen. They didn't even make the playoffs. But the Padres did. And the Padres, if you look at the team, in my opinion, losing Musgrove, that's big. But getting Pivetta gives them a decent starting pitcher in that 4th spot. And now you've got half a dozen guys competing for maybe the 5th spot. Plus, you're going to have some depth, either on the major league roster or pitching down in El Paso. And as you know, you really need more than just 5 guys to start the year. You've got to have some depth. And the bullpen also seems to have a lot of depth. I know when, in years before, Padre general managers told me that, the bullpen, you've got to change every year, because the guys that do well one year doesn't necessarily mean they're going to do that again the next year, because they get used a lot when they're in the bullpen. And I think that's the same situation with this year. Right now, you go into it with Suarez, certainly as your closer, but they've got a guy on the bench named Jeremiah Estrada who's right behind him and could fill that role if need be. They picked up that reliever who the Dodgers signed for $72 million. He's terrific. I wish we could have kept him, but he was a hired gun, hired to help them win in the playoffs, and he did a great job. I know why the Dodgers signed him, though, because now Shohei Ohtani will not have to face him. If you remember in the playoffs, he faced him 4 times and struck out Ohtani all 4 times.
Yeah, he was absolutely fantastic, Tanner Scott, and he ended up getting that nice sweetheart deal with the Dodgers. But, you know, you take a look at the Padres' everyday lineup. I mean, Luis Ariz will be back. He's coming back from thumb surgery, and the guy won a batting title in the last 2 months. Every time he hit the ball, his hands were ringing. So, you know, he's going to be better. Cronenworth, you know, had a fairly good year, even though he gave some ground the second half and his average dropped. He still drove in some runs. And then you got Bogarts back at shortstop in better condition than he was a year ago. And then you got Manny. I mean, that infield pretty good. And I'll tell you, the thing about Ariz that I liked, you know, I know he's a very, very average middle infielder, but over at first base, watching him as the season went on, he actually got better over there.
You know, and something to remember, I mean, the team won 93 games last year, and arguably your key guys missed time or weren't at 100% because of either recovering from surgery or injuries during the year. And I'm talking about Tatis missed a couple of months. Machado was nowhere near 100% when the season began after elbow surgery and gradually got better. And then the last month or so, he was back to being Machado. Bogarts, you know, he broke a bone and he was out for a couple of months. And even Ariz had a wrist injury that affected him. He still hit about 300 while he had that injury, but still he's a better hitter than that and should be even better. So, I mean, there's a lot to like. Plus, Merrill, with his rookie season under his belt, I don't think he's going to have any kind of a sophomore slump. This kid, with his attitude and his ability, I think he just gets better and better. So, yeah. So when you face the Padres, you're going to have to get through the first 5 guys, 6 guys, if you want to count Cronenworth, and they're all pretty good. You know, you probably have Ariz leading off, then you'll probably have Tatis second. I'm guessing Merrill third, Machado fourth, and Bogarts fifth. And we haven't really seen the real Bogarts yet for a complete season. He was a great player with Boston, one of the best players in the league. So I'd love to see him bounce back. And I think now that he's going back to shortstop, he lost about 10 pounds. He's got an attitude about proving himself there. And he's always been a good hitter. We've seen flashes of it, but not the full Bogarts deal. I think we might get that this year.
Bob, let's talk about Fernando, because, you know, when I was on the radio and now doing this podcast, whenever I talk about him, I get a smile on my face, because when you come to the ballpark, this guy could do anything on a baseball field that any of the great Hall of Famers could do. He can run, he can throw, he can field, he can hit a ball 450 feet, he can go from first to third. He's just a magnificent player. And I'm just wondering, when are we going to see this guy play? I'm not asking 162. I'd take 145 or 150, because I would love to see the numbers this guy could put up.
I would too. I mean, the talent is off the charts. When I first saw him, I thought he was the most exciting, most talented player I had ever seen with the Padres. But he was also very young, and now he's gone through some growing pains, and we'll see. This could be the year for him to really blossom as one of the best in baseball. I know a lot of people around baseball feel that even right now, he's among the top 4 or 5 players in the game. And remember, he won the National League home run title just a few years ago, and he had missed 30 games of the season. There's just nothing he can't do, and maybe this will be the year when it starts.
You know, I watch the MLB Network quite a bit. They'll always talk about the Padres and talk about Fernando, and you know they have their top 100, and you know that's their opinion. My top 100 probably be a little bit different, but that's fine. Mm-hmm. But we got a guy here. If he could ever stay healthy, I mean, he dwarfs what Juan Soto can do. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, you know, you'd have to say Soto can walk more. But I'd rather I'd rather see Tatis swing the bat instead of walking, and because he can do so much damage. And when he gets on base, I mean, what did Ohtani steal last year? 59 bases. I don't think you want Tatis trying to steal that much, but he's capable of doing that if he had to.
Yeah, he's sure fun to watch. You mentioned Jackson Merrill, and we got Tatis. Now we got to figure out who's going to play left field. And give me your thoughts on the signings last week. They bring in a San Diego kid, a kid that I know pretty well, Connor Joe, who's bounced around the big leagues, a good, solid utility type guy. And they bring in Jason Hayward, and they've got some other guys they're going to run out there. Gavin Sheets, who they signed to a minor league contract, and Terso Ornelas, and they got a few other guys, Oscar Gonzalez. But your thoughts on how you think the Padres are going to attack that left field spot?
Well, it looks better now than it did a couple of weeks ago. I mean, you'd love to have Profar back doing what he did last year, but what he did last year was totally unexpected. He had never done it in any of his previous 9 seasons in the big leagues. I'm delighted for him. They got him a terrific contract, but I mean, the Padres signed him for $1 million last year to be a utility player, and he ended up being an all-star. Whether you could expect that again, we'll see. I like the guy, so I hope things work out for him, and he certainly got a nice contract from Atlanta. But it looks to me like a platoon situation right now in left field with Hayward and for the most part Connor Joe, and they both do better. For Hayward, he does better against right-handed pitching, and Joe terrific against the left-handers. So it might turn out to be a pretty good situation.
Then the catching situation, they re-signed Elias Diaz. It took them, a long time to get him re-signed. I think they were probably looking around, and boy, the catching depth right now in Major League Baseball is not good. Luis Camposano, who they keep waiting to really take this job and run with it, played so poorly the second half of the year. He got shipped down to AAA, wasn't on the postseason roster. They got Brent Sullivan, who's bounced up and down, kind of a guy they keep in AAA as a safety gap if somebody goes down. And then they signed the veteran Martin Maldonado, who at 38 years of age, easy to say his best days are behind him, but he got DFA'd last year by the Chicago White Sox when he hit 114.
Yeah, I hope they're not counting on him too much. I never figured out that particular signing, but that was before they signed Diaz to come back. I was really disappointed that Higashioka left, signed a 2-year deal with Texas, but they made a terrific offer to him. I know AJ Preller did offer Higashioka a contract, but he got the better deal with Dallas. He's near the end of his career, and it's hard to criticize him for taking that offer. But I think he would have been the perfect bridge to Ethan Salas, the youngster who's only 18 years old, who they think is going to be a great player. We don't know yet, but Higashioka, to me, would have been the perfect bridge. Now you have to hope that Diaz and Camposano can hold down the spot until Ethan Salas is ready.
Bob, jumping over the starting pitching, I think unless there were to be a trade and Michael King went out the door or Dylan Cease went out the door, I mean, the rotation's pretty well set except in that fifth spot. You got Cease, you got King, you got Darvish, now you got Nick Pivetta. And for the fans out there, Pivetta met with the media this morning. He is officially a Padre. They announced that he passed his physical. So they've got their top 4. And now you got, Randy Vasquez and Matt Waldron, who I think will be better this year. I think both those guys will be better. Johnny Brito, they signed the 32-year-old left-hander last week from the KBO, coming back to organize ball after spending a year over there. Your thoughts on that fifth spot?
Yeah, that Hart is kind of intriguing to me. I mean, he not only was a good pitcher there, he was the best pitcher. He won what would be the equivalent of the Cy Young Award in the Korean baseball organization. And he's a left-hander, and the Padres don't have an established left-hander in their rotation. It's nice if you can have at least one. And so I'll keep an eye out for him this spring. That should be part of the fun of spring training. See how he does, see how Waldron is. Waldron was the Padres' best starter for a couple of months last year, and then kind of ran out. Now, whether he needs to throw his knuckleball more or not, we'll see. But he should come back with a much better attitude. He knows now that when he's at his best, he can get major league hitters out. So yeah, when you're only trying to fill one spot in the starting rotation, it's a lot easier than when you're trying to fill two. Or in some cases, when I was there broadcasting, we needed to fill four.
Hey, Bob, talk a little bit about Matt Waldron, because he's not a hard thrower. I love his delivery. He's got a repeatable delivery. He throws that knuckleball. And I just think mentally and physically last year, he wore out. I think he will be better this year. I'm not throwing the towel in on Matt Waldron. I think he can help this ball club again. And let's face it, you brought it up. For 2 months last year, he was really as good as anybody in the Padre rotation. Whether he got wins or not, he was throwing deep into ball games. And if it weren't for his efforts, when a lot of those other guys were down and out with injuries, they wouldn't have been a playoff team.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. It looked like he just ran out of gas, not only physically but mentally. Hopefully he's had a whole off season now to recharge, and he's gotten Ruben Niebla working with him for a second year. I expect he's going to end up throwing that knuckleball more, and I hope he does, because that's when he's at his most effective, I think.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the bullpen. There's a host of candidates. Robert Suarez, there have been some trade rumors surrounding him. $10 million this year, and he's got an option for each of the next 2 years at $8 million, which I'm sure he would opt out of if he had another big year. I mean, he had 37 saves a year ago. But when you take a look at the Padre bullpen, they got a lot of guys coming back from a year ago, and all those guys pitched pretty doggone good.
Yeah, they did. And the young guy that I like is Estrada. Remember, he struck out 13 consecutive batters at one point last season. He throws really hard, as does Suarez. But, Suarez kind of gave up ground a little bit a couple of months. He still was good, but the earned run average overall was over 4 for the last 6 weeks or so.
That's very true. What was your thoughts on Yuki Matsui last year?
I was disappointed the first few months. I thought he would be better than he was. But then he came on, his earned run average was still in the 3s, and he got much better, I thought, as he adjusted more to major league hitters. So I think he'll be much better this year than he was last year, over the total season.
Okay, I mentioned Dodgers. I think, realistically, you got to figure the Dodgers are going to win the division. And I know Pacoda, they came out with their rankings. They had the Dodgers winning 103.8, so basically 104 games. I don't know if the Dodgers will win 104. Some people say, they're going to win 120 games. I don't think they're going to do that either. And the reason, I think more than anything else, with that pitching staff, and they've got as good a pitching staff as the Dodgers have, about 4 or 5 of those guys, and they're talking about a 6-man rotation, but they got about 8 or 9 guys now that Kershaw signed that could eventually start for him. But 4 or 5 of those guys are coming off of injury-plagued seasons. And, they may have to shut some guys down. But the big thing with them, they want to win the division. They want to get, the home field type of advantage. And they don't want to go into the postseason hurt. So they're going to gauge their guys. I think they win the division. I think Arizona's right there, and I think the Padres are right there. I think 3 teams out of the National League West are going to make the playoffs this year.
Yeah, it could very well be. The only team in the division that looks hopelessly out of it as far as being a playoff contender is Colorado. The Giants signed a terrific shortstop, Willie Adames, who should help them greatly. And I think they'll be improved. But I do think the Padres and Arizona are both ahead of them. And, of course, everybody picks the Dodgers, and why wouldn't you? You look on paper, my gosh, what a terrific lineup they have. And not only that, John, they got a bunch of really good guys on that team. You'd rather that you could hate them or dislike them, but they're good people, my gosh, Mookie Betts, what a terrific player and person he is. Yeah, and the other players too. Their first baseman, Freddie, he's great. The catcher, Willie Smith, I like him. He's a good hitter, good catcher. And I personally think Dave Roberts is a terrific manager. I didn't like what he did last year in the playoffs when he he made Manny Machado a villain for tossing a ball into the dugout too hard, as if he was throwing it at Roberts. And Dave admitted later he was trying to fire his team up, that was basically a lot of BS.
You know Dave pretty well, like I do, and he's an ultimate competitor, and he can get a little fiery every once in a while.
Yeah, I think he's underrated in Los Angeles as a manager. I mean, they're very critical of him, a lot of the fans there, but just remember this: the manager of any major league team knows more about his players and his team than anybody else does. And sometimes you have to swallow information that you have and take the heat from the fans and the media when it's not warranted, but you're doing it for the team.
You know, I remember that comment you just made really put a smile on my face and kind of hit my heart fluttering a little bit, because the first man that told me that about the manager has to know the ball club better than anybody in the organization, including the general manager, was a friend of yours and a great friend of both of ours, Dave Garcia. When I would sit and talk with Dave for hours on end about, being a major league manager and developing players, and he gave me so many words of wisdom. I remember going over his house one afternoon with a folder, and I was writing down notes about, managing, and he said, "John, Gabe Paul was on me about this and that." I go, "Gabe, you're not on the road trips with me. You're not in the hotel with me. I know who's doing what, when they're doing it." And that is so true. If the manager doesn't know everything about what's going on with his players, then he shouldn't be the manager.
I can give you one quick example, and I learned it young. I was still in my 20s, a young TV sportscaster at Channel 10, and Dave Bristol was the manager of the Padres of the Pacific Coast League. And Dave went on to a really good career in the big leagues, but he had a relief pitcher named Teddy Davidson, who at that time was the number one guy in the Pacific Coast League. He would be like the Trevor Hoffman or the Tanner Scott that you have today. So there was a situation at Westgate Park where it was obvious to bring in Teddy Davidson, and he didn't do it. Brought in somebody else. The pitcher got bombed. The Padres lost the game. And I ran into Dave at a Mission Valley watering hole later on, and I asked him, I said, "Dave, where was Teddy Davidson today?" He said, "Bob, I couldn't tell the media, and I didn't want the other team to know, but Teddy had gone south of the border last night, and he could barely stand up in the bullpen. And so I had to bring somebody else in, but I wanted to protect him from, that information. And so that's what happened. So he just ate the decision, said, "Well, manager's decision. I brought this guy in. I thought he'd be best at that moment." So he protected Teddy. He lost that game, but I'm sure he won Teddy Davidson over and the rest of his ball club. But I learned a lesson as a young sportscaster about managing managers and their knowledge, and sometimes they have to do things like that.
When I was doing the post-game show, and I used to go to Boch, right when they were finishing up batting practice. I do it with Boch, and I did it with Buddy Black when he was here. I go, "Is everybody hot tonight?" Because, people are calling in the talk show after the game. "Hey, how come this guy didn't come in?" And I could say, "Hey, you know what? He pitched 2 of the last 3 days or 3 out of the last 4. They wanted to give him a little bit of a break." And, because, the manager's listening to the post game on the way home, and you want to have accurate information. You don't want to make something up and make the manager look bad.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, I mean, it's amazing how good fans are at managing your bullpen. And so when you bring somebody in and it doesn't work out, then you're a stupid manager and you should have done what they think you should have done. But because they have so much more knowledge than you about who has a sore arm, who doesn't, who maybe went out too late last night and who didn't, that sort of thing. And they have to manage around all that. So yeah, it's a lesson to keep in mind whenever you watch a baseball game and a manager makes a move and you wonder, what the hell is he doing?
Okay, last thing, and we're going to jump off the Padres. You've been a season ticket holder since Steve Fisher came to town, and of course you're a proud Aztec and all that good stuff. But give me your thoughts on the basketball team. You were at the game the other night.
Yeah, I was. College basketball is a great sport. I personally prefer it over the NBA just because of the way the games are played and the kids and so forth. And I've watched San Diego State basketball since I was a freshman out there in 1956, John. And I watched Tony Gwynn as a point guard set the assist record that still stands. So I've been watching them for a long time. But it's been so much fun to watch Steve Fisher and Brian Dutcher and the way they have built this program into one of the best in the country. I mean, they were in the Final Two just a couple of years ago. They made the Sweet 16 last year, lost to Connecticut. This is a different kind of team than Dutcher likes because it's a very young team. He likes those guys who've been around a while. So they're inconsistent because they're young and they make young mistakes. They can look great one game, not so good the next. But the one thing that I observed in the last several weeks is that the Magoon Guath is starting to come on as a terrific force. And Boise State, both their best player, Degenhardt, and their coach, Leon Rice, commented on it afterwards that when he is intimidating around the basket, it's difficult to drive. You can't shoot over him. He's starting to be a major force for San Diego State's defense, and they really beat a good Boise State team pretty easily the other night.
Yeah, they've got an interesting week. Tomorrow night they got San Jose State. I think it is tomorrow night. I believe it's San Jose
Fresno,
State or Fresno State. Excuse me, Fresno
Yeah.
State tomorrow night at home, and then Saturday a big one up against Utah State. Utah State lost a real tough one yesterday on the road to New Mexico. That New Mexico team playing some great basketball right now.
Yeah, they still have New Mexico to play here at Viejas in a couple of weeks, and those two teams are good. Utah State and New Mexico. New Mexico looks especially good. Donovan Dent, a guard, is maybe the best player in the whole conference.
I wouldn't argue that. Mr. Chandler, it's a pleasure, an honor. And I remember when Tony Gwynn hired both of you and I to do those games early in his coaching career out at San Diego State. Not only did I get hired by a Hall of Famer, I was sitting next to a true Hall of Fame legend. And those days you and I called some Aztec baseball together. I'll always remember those. They were fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun. John, you and I, we could sit here and talk for another couple of hours if we wanted to, but you probably don't have that much time.
Hey, Bob, again, hey, mark it down. We got to get you on before opening day. I know you'll be there again, and we'll work out a time to get you on and get your thoughts after spring training just before that first pitch was thrown.
Okay, John, have a great show.
All right, thank you very much. One of my favorite guys in San Diego right there. Without a doubt, one of my favorite guys in San Diego all time. Have so much respect for him, and I always bug him. Are you coming to the ballpark tonight? You coming to the ballpark tonight? I love when he would sit. Can you imagine how lucky I was to be able to have Bob Chandler and Randy Jones hanging out with me all the time at the ballpark? I mean, that is great stuff, let alone talking to Jerry Coleman and Ted and everybody before the games. I mean, I was like a pig in mud. It was fantastic. Okay, we got a lot to get to, and I went a little bit long with Bob, but hey, like Bob said, we could have gone another 2 hours. We could talk about everything, but I want to get to the Padres' fifth starter. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, folks, to see who ends up garnering that spot. And if you're tuning in a little bit late, Nick Pivetta met with the media this morning in Peoria, and it was kind of funny. He goes, yeah, I talked to AJ and Schmidt, and he referred to Mike Schild as Schmidt. I went back and listened and I was kind of cracking up. But anyways, first meeting with the media, he passed the physical, so he's the Padres' fourth starter. So you got Darvish, King, Cease, and Pivetta. Fifth starters in the running right now that we're aware of. Randy Vasquez, who had some really good moments a year ago. And, he's still a young major league starter developing. We talked with Bob Chandler about Matt Waldron. I think Waldron's going to be fine. I think he'll be better. I like Waldron myself. And I like Vasquez. I was excited about Vasquez coming over from the Yankees. I don't know if anybody else was, but I was. Got to get innings in the big leagues, man. You got to get innings in the big leagues to get better. I mean, these guys can flat out hit. But Vasquez and Waldron, for me, have to be right there, along with the signing of Kyle Hart, the left-hander that we talked about on Friday from the KBO. Guy had a great season a year ago. Tremendous season, got a sweeper, bringing it in on that right-hand hitter, almost like a slower slider on that back foot to right-hand hitters. I saw a lot of tape on him last week, and man, he ate up right-hand hitters. And I would imagine that sweeper would give left-handers a lot of trouble. So you got Kyle Hart, and then you got Johnny Brito, who can give you some innings. And then you got Steven Kolek, who's a young guy, developing, and they're going to stretch him out in spring training and see what they can do with him. So at the end of the day, the Padres, I think, are going to be okay. I mean, signing Pivetta just bumps it down to the 5th spot. And granted, you're probably going to have some injuries. I mean, Darvish is getting up there in years. King was healthy last year. Cease. Those guys, they could miss a start here and there with a sore shoulder, or tight elbow, or tight forearm. But Padres right now, they've got some guys that can go in there, and with the depth in their bullpen, they're going to be fine. I don't see a big problem as long as everybody can get out of spring training healthy. That's the big thing. In the morning paper, there was an article on Joe Musgrove, and Musgrove was such a trooper. I love that guy. I wish we had 26 Joe Musgroves. I wish every athlete in the country was like Joe Musgrove. Mike Schilt, and I know this story because I heard about it. Mike Schilt took Musgrove out to lunch, and they're sitting there at lunch. And Mike goes, well, what are you going to do this year? And Musgrove goes, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, you're not going to be able to pitch. How are you going to do this? He goes, well, I'm going to do my rehab, and I plan on being at the ballpark all the time, and I plan on traveling, and I plan on being in the clubhouse, and I plan on being in the dugout. That's Joe Musgrove. And Musgrove today in the paper talked about how he looks at guys on the IL. Now, by the way, Joe's not going to be able to throw a baseball for another 2 months. He's doing everything. I know he's ahead of schedule. I've heard he's ahead of schedule, but he's not going to throw a baseball for another 2 months. But Joe talked about how he looks at guys on the IL, guys coming back from surgery or whatever. They're on the IL for a long length of time. He goes, guys will come to the ballpark. They'll hang out in the clubhouse, but they won't be in the dugout. And he goes, and I love the paper didn't censor it. It goes, Musgrove's quote, it kind of pisses me off. Musgrove loves the game of baseball, and he loves the city of San Diego. He loves the Padres organization, and he's going to be out the entire year. Now, I know that Joe, in the paper today, he goes, I want to be ready, by October, okay, or September. I don't care if Joe Musgrove pitches one pitch all year long. I want him healthy for 2026. But if they can hang that carrot out there to him, that, hey, maybe he can get going. And again, he is, from what I understand, ahead of schedule. That would be a nice carrot, to keep him motivated. But I don't think you need to hang carrots to keep Joe Musgrove motivated. He's motivated every time he opens his eyes and puts his feet on the floor. The guy wants to come out and compete. And I bet you deep down, knowing Joe a little bit, and I don't know him real well, but I bet you he feels like, even though it's not his fault, he probably shouldn't have pitched last year. I thought he was hurt. Anybody that listened to me last year, I told you, this guy's hurt. I could tell by the way he was pitching, but he found a way to do it. In his heart, he probably feels like he let you and me and everybody down. He didn't let us down. He went out there and gave us everything he had. So, but he plans on, at this lunch, he tells Shelley, he goes, I'm going to be with you guys. I'm traveling with you. I'm going to be in the dugout. So we'll see. There are going to be times where he's going to have to work out and, miss workouts or miss trips, because he's going to have to take care of business to continue to rehab and testing to see where he's at. But Padres are in good shape for that 5th starter. They really are. And then, I don't know, after this year, I don't know if Pivetta, I guess Pivetta may be back for a second year. We don't know about King. We don't know about Cease. We'll have to wait and see on that. Okay, I want to talk just a little bit about the bullpen. I'm going to kind of give you the candidates. And again, they open up on Friday against Seattle and Peoria. And we'll see who's going to start. We'll talk about that on the show Friday morning. But they got a list of bullpen guys. I got a list of 11 guys right now that are competing for 8 jobs. You got 5 starters and you got 8 relievers. Listen to this list. I mean, this will choke a horse. I mean, we got a hell of a bullpen here. And granted, like Bob Chandler said, some guys and general managers shy away from bringing back the same bullpen the second year because they get used quite a bit. And then one guy may have a great year, and next year he can't get anybody out. Listen to the candidates for the Padres bullpen. I mean, it's long and deep. Number 1, Robert Suarez. Now, if they wanted to trade Robert, they probably could because they've got some guys that could fill in. They could save $10 million. But Robert Suarez, okay, you got him. You got Jason Adam, who I thought was fantastic last year when he came over in the deal prior to the trading deadline. Jeremiah Estrada, who set a major league record last year, striking out 13 hitters in a row. He should only be better. Adrian Morejon, who is not going to compete for a starting role. They're not going to stretch him out because he was so good in the bullpen. And he's another guy that eventually could develop into being a closer. I don't think he's there right now. Maybe he'll get an opportunity from time to time this year, but he had a great year. I mean, they're really starting to get something out of Adrian Morejon. Hopefully he can stay healthy. Then you got Sean Reynolds, a big guy that throws heat. At times last year, I thought he pitched pretty well. Didn't, get a million opportunities, but there's a guy that could continue to develop. And who knows, he could be maybe a surprise guy this year. Then you got the left-hander Yuki Matsui, and Bob Chandler said, hey, the first couple of months, underwhelmed. Towards the end of the year, this guy put up some outstanding numbers. And he's going to be more comfortable pitching in the big leagues, more comfortable living in the United States. So I'm expecting bigger and better things from Yuki Matsui. Then you got Brian Hoeing. I mean, Brian Hoeing's a stud, absolute stud. And there was talk that maybe they would stretch him out and make him a starter, and they go, no, we're going to keep that guy in the bullpen. And I think that's a good move. Then you got Wandy Peralta, who missed some time, and I know he drove some fans crazy, gave up some home runs at the wrong time last year, but at the end of the year, if you looked at his numbers, had a pretty good year, but gave up some big homers late in ball games when they had to bring him in. Now, 3 guys that, we've seen a little bit of in their career. Tom Cosgrove, who 2 years ago, left-hander, was great. Last year, he wasn't very good. He got shipped down to the minor leagues. You got Alec Jacob, who at times pitched pretty well. A couple years ago, we saw more of him, but he's another guy competing. And then a guy they got from the White Sox, from the White Sox, but never pitched for him. He actually pitched for the Yankees, Ron Marinaccio. And he got a big arm, and he's another guy that could help this bullpen. So, and there's other guys the Padres are going to have in on minor league contracts, but that's the nucleus of the 11-man group right now, competing for 8 spots in the bullpen. Pretty damn good. Pretty damn good. I don't know about you, but I'm excited about the exhibition game. And I know they probably won't play any of their big guys, but I'm excited about the exhibition game on Friday. Love Padres baseball. Very excited about the upcoming year. And are we a perfect ball club? No. But and even the Dodgers got their issues, folks. They really do. I mean, you can say, well, what issues do they have? Well, I'll tell you what their issues are. Their issues are they got a situation with, they've got all this starting pitching, but a lot of those guys are coming off arm and shoulder problems. And we'll have to wait and see. Ohtani, as we get into talking about Ohtani, Ohtani's going to come back. He's not going to pitch until May. He's not going to pitch in the Cactus League. He's not going to pitch in Japan. And then they come back. How about Dave Roberts? Talk about having to navigate something. They've got to open up in Japan. And by the way, folks, those games will be at 3 a.m. I was thinking about that last night. Am I going to get up in the middle of the night to watch the Dodgers play the Cubs? You know what? I probably will. But they open up against the Chicago Cubs, and those games are going to be at 3 a.m. 3 a.m. But then the Dodgers have to come back to Arizona, and they're going to play some exhibition games. And I think it'll be cool for Yamamoto and Ohtani and Sasaki. Apparently, Yamamoto and Sasaki are going to pitch in those series. That 2-game set over there in Japan. But Ohtani threw his bullpen. And this is how far away he is right now. He's been throwing quite a bit. But he threw to Will Smith, he threw 14 pitches, and they were 92 to 94. Threw 14-pitch bullpen. And they're going to, hey, there's no reason to rush Shohei Ohtani. As long as he can stay healthy and swing the bat, there's no reason in the world to rush him back on the mound. And I said 2 years ago, even before he went down with an injury, when the Dodgers originally signed him, I said, you know what? They had to have that guy be the closer. Anybody that signs him, they had to make him a closer rather than innings. Rather than logging innings, let him come in and be the closer. He's got that split. He's got the 100-mile-an-hour fastball. And, you know, a guy could close out 3 or 4 games a week for you. And you get even more out of him than, once every 6 days. And that's what we hear the Dodgers are going to do. They're going to have a 6-man rotation. But I just want to let you know, Ohtani threw his first bullpen. Okay, now we're going to go to really one of my favorite players in baseball, Nolan Arenado. Good guy, hardworking guy, beats himself up when he doesn't play well. I had the opportunity to meet him a few years ago when he was playing still in Colorado. Buddy Black brought him over to me after a game one night. He was getting into a VW bus, and Buddy goes, "Hey, Nolan, come here for a minute." And he gets out of his car, comes over, and Buddy introduces me to him. We had a nice conversation. Nice guy, hardworking guy. And I think, he wants to be on the West Coast. Really, he wants to be on the West Coast. He wants to play either for the Dodgers, the Padres, or the Angels. I know the Yankees were in the mix. Boston was in the mix, maybe to a deal until they signed Bregman. He nixed the deal because he's got a no trade. He nixed the deal to the Houston Astros. But this is going to be interesting to watch because John Mozeliak, who's the president of baseball operations there in St. Louis, this is last year. And I think the reason he's hanging around is he's going to try to clean up what they got left in St. Louis. They didn't re-sign Goldschmidt. They've let some other guys walk. Nolan Arenado's owed over $7 million or over $70 million the next 3 years, and they're going to try to peddle him. They're going to have to eat some money. Arenado's not going anywhere unless he wants to go. He's not going to some second division ball club. He wants to go to a winner, getting late in his career. He's 34 years of age. And he'd love to play for the Dodgers. You know that. And he has said that. He goes, "Hey, I'm going to wait until the Dodgers say no." Well, as far as I know, the Dodgers haven't said no yet. But he arrived at Cardinals camp yesterday. And Ollie Marmol, the manager, said, "Hey, this guy's a pro, business as usual, but it's going to be weird. It's going to be weird having him there because any day he could be gone." So I don't think Arenado will be with the Cardinals on opening day, but keep that in mind. By the way, the Padres, Angels, Dodgers were on his list. His official list had, I mentioned the Red Sox, Yankees, Dodgers, Padres, Angels. 3 years left on his contract, $74 million. 8-time All-Star, 10-time Gold Glove winner. Last year, hit .272, down year, 16 homers. Power numbers weren't good, and I think he drove in 71 runs. And he said he'd be willing to play another position. That'd probably end up being first base. So there you have it. Okay, let's get to the NBA new All-Star game format. I spent 4 hours yesterday. I watched the pregame stuff on TNT. I turned it on. I was cooking dinner. And I turned it on at 4 o'clock. Game scheduled to start at 5 o'clock. Well, that didn't happen. That didn't start till after 5:30. I'm okay with that. The new format, they had 4 teams, and so they had basically a semifinal, and they played to 40. First team to 40 moved on. Well, in the first game, I'm watching the court up there in the Bay Area where the game was. I could have done without the court. Didn't really blow my skirt up at all. But Team Kenny got beat by Team Chuck, Charles Barkley. The one thing I did like about the event was that they honored Ernie Johnson Charles Barkley, Kenny Smith, and Shaquille O'Neal for all their work on TNT because the contract's going away after this year. That was their last All-Star game. And throughout the course of the evening, they decorated those guys and celebrated them, and it was cool. It was really cool. But Team Kenny got beat in the first game by Team Chuck, 41-32, and then Shaq's team beat Candace Parker's team 42-35. So now you got the finals. And Team Shaq beat Charles Barkley's Global Stars 41-25. Steph Curry, 12 points, 4 rebounds, and assists. He's the MVP. He could have gone to Jason Tatum. Man, Jason Tatum kind of gets screwed, man. He didn't get to play much in the Olympics with Steve Kerr. And last night in the final game, he had 15 points, 6 of 7 shooting in that final game, 3 of 4 on 3 balls, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists. He could have been the MVP. Now, Kevin Hart, who I like, the comedian, celebrity, he was great. I loved when Shaq said to him, he goes, "Hey, where do you get your clothes? Kids Are Us?" I thought that was pretty good. Pretty good line by Shaq. But Kevin Hart, I thought at times was good, but there might have been a little too much Kevin Hart. But Kevin Hart was the least of the problems. I would like to hear from you fans on this one, because I wanted to come here today and tell you that I was really excited about the new All-Star game format, that I really enjoyed the game. I can't do it. I can't do it. I love basketball, and there aren't athletes that I hold in higher esteem athletically for the size, the grace, the power, the strength that they possess, and the skill level. But the NBA's got some really severe problems. And a lot of them aren't the players. It's the way the game is being delivered to us. LeBron James pulled out. I don't know why he couldn't have, pulled out 3 days earlier and let somebody else, maybe a Norman Powell, who's having a great year for the Clippers. He might have gotten a call. But LeBron pulls out an hour and a half, 2 hours before the game. The production of all the celebrity, great, okay? But I want to see basketball. And this totally turned off people yesterday that love basketball. Because you played the first game between Team Kenny and Team Chuck, and then you had a break, and you had music and entertainment, and then you had the next game between Candace Parker's team and Shaquille's team, and then you had a long break in between. They gave away awards to Ernie Johnson and Charles Barkley and the whole crew, and I had no problem with that. But it's still, those guys are sitting over there waiting to play. And you're talking about injuries. The longer you sit, the more you stiffen up, and you got to crank up, and maybe you're not going in on a dunk and your knee's a little stiff, and you do something. So once the game starts, they need to keep playing. They just need to keep playing. And maybe, after the second semifinal, you take a 7-minute break, and then you tee it up and you're ready to go again. I don't think anybody got overworked in that game yesterday. But I think the NBA is going to, I know they're like a football coach or basketball coach on recruiting day. Oh, man, it was great. We're really happy with the way it went. I don't know what the ratings were. I don't really care. I'm a basketball fan. And the one thing I would have liked to have seen, I'd like to see a few more one-on-one interviews with players during these breaks, rather than listening to musicians. I have no idea who they are and what kind of music they're playing. I'd rather hear from some of the young players. They wonder why people aren't watching. Nobody knows who their players are. They know who Steph Curry are. They know who LeBron is. They know who Kevin Durant is. They know some of the guys that have been there for a long period of time. Get Wembayama. Do some interviews with him during the game. Do some interviews with some of the newer guys in the league. But they missed a golden opportunity yesterday. And I know the players say, well, they changed it up because guys weren't playing hard. Well, you know what? Figure out how you're going to play hard. Okay? Show some class here and get after it. I mean, Draymond Green is probably getting beat up today by people in the NBA, but Draymond Green, who, by the way, in my opinion, is going to be a Hall of Famer and should be a Hall of Famer. I don't like his antics on the court, and I think the older he's gotten, the more he's become a court jester. But I think he's a Hall of Fame player. Yeah, and remember, the Hall of Fame isn't just what you do in the pros, what you did in college, kind of your bulk of work. And he thought it was garbage format. And everybody would take up and say, well, even Oscar Robertson came out. Well, he said the league was boring, Draymond Green, a couple of weeks ago. He goes, well, it may be boring for him because he just passes the ball to Curry. And I'm not going to argue with the Big O. I remember as a kid watching him play against the San Diego Rockets. And Jerry Lucas playing on that team as well. Adrian Smith, and they had some great Guy Rogers, they had some great players. I was a young kid going to those games back in the day when the Rockets were here. But the NBA's got a problem. I watch the NBA to watch the Lakers. I don't necessarily watch any other teams in the NBA. I mean, if I turn the TV on, there's nothing else on, I'll watch, the fourth quarter of a game. But I'm a Lakers fan. And I don't really watch a lot of the other stuff in the NBA unless it's, Lakers aren't on and I turn on the TV and they're coming up next and I'll catch the latter part of a game. Or maybe a game from Boston Garden. The Celtics are pretty good. But the NBA's got some real problems, and I wish I could have come here today and been all excited about the game. The game was like an aftermath yesterday. And I'll tell you what, it was great that they had the rising stars. They were, early on, they got to play with Candace Parker in the semifinal. They got beat 42-35. That's great. That a lot of the young players got to come play. They played one game to 40 and they're done. Go take a shower. Like Kenny Smith's team, bunch of NBA players. They played, they got beat 41-32. Go take a shower, you're done. That's not the way it should be. That's not the way it should be. Okay, let's get to a coach's mailbag and then we're going to get out of here. Okay, let's take a look right here. What do we got? Oh, Yusuf. Coach, what did you tell Preller about X and other players? Well, when I saw AJ at our holiday happy hour at the Leucadian this past December, we talked about the roster a little bit, but we talked primarily about Xander Bogaerts. And I was pretty outspoken last year that I thought Xander should have stayed at shortstop and kept Hassan Kim at second. And I said to AJ, I go, is Bogaerts going to be your guy? He goes, yeah, he is. And I go, I think he can still play there. I just think he needs to get in better shape. And AJ agreed with me. And I read in the paper the other day, Xander, a real nice article on Xander, who, by the way, is a quality man, came into camp 10 pounds lighter. And working out in Arizona, maybe he'll drop another 5. I thought he needed to lose about 15 to 20 myself. But again, I think he's going to quicken up. It's going to make his hand speed a little bit quicker. I think Xander Bogaerts, if he can stay healthy, going to put up a good year. I don't think he's going to necessarily hit 300 with 25 bombs, but hey, if he hits 285 and hits 20 homers, I'll be very, very happy, and play a shutdown shortstop, I'll be extremely happy. So that's what I told AJ. I thought Bogaerts could play short, and I thought he needed to lose some weight, and he's lost 10 pounds, and we'll see where it goes from there. Excited about seeing him play. The Red Devil. Trade Suarez while he has a really value for some offensive top prospects. Cease to. We are rebuilding, like it or not. The Red Devil. I don't want to rebuild. We still have a window of opportunity. We can still win. We just got to get into the tournament. Don't throw in that towel yet. Don't throw in the towel yet. Now, if you traded Suarez, you could get by because you've got guys that can fill that role. I'm not going to say that Brian Hoeing or Jason Adam or Morahorn or Estrada, I'm not saying those guys would be one guy would do it all. It'd probably mix and match depending on who was coming up in what inning. In the 8th and 9th inning, you might have your closer throw the 8th rather than the 9th. You'd have to, do some navigating on that. But if Suarez is here, he's your closer. But you could save $10 million if you want to go that direction. Not only that, you would also pedal off his options for the next 2 years, because at the end of 2025, I was reading on Robert Suarez's contract the other day. After this year, he has to make a decision for the next 2 years. So he'd have to make a decision on 2026 and 2027. I can tell you this, if he has another year like he did last year, well, he's going to opt out because it's only for $8 million. And he's going to make 10 this year. He'd be going backwards off 2 great years in a row. But I'm not trading Cease. And the only way I'm trading Cease, or King for that matter, is if we drop out of it before the trading deadline. And with 7 teams eligible for the playoff, Padres are going to be in it. Let's get to the playoffs and give it one more shot. Now, if they don't do damage this year, then now we're talking about having to retool some things. But again, you've got some contracts you can't move. You're not going to move Machado's contract. You're not going to move Bogarts' contract. Cronenworth's contract is movable. There's no question about that. You're not going to trade Fernando. I mean, as long as Fernando, doesn't, ride and get hurt on a motorcycle again, you're not trading Fernando. Fernando's contract is very, very workable. You got him for a total of $340 million up to 2034. And I know it eventually escalates up to $36 million a year. He's going to make 20 this year after making 11 a year ago. But now I don't necessarily want to trade Suarez, but if he were to be traded, I think the Padres can fill that. You can't fill it really if you trade Cease or Michael King. Okay, let's get to one more here. The Padres need a TV contract. Amen to that. Padres have a lot of depth in starting pitching and relief pitching. Nick Pivetta was the best signing the Padres have made so far. Yeah, correct. As far as the TV contract, I don't know what's going on. I heard the Arizona Diamondbacks are maybe getting a new TV contract, and they were with Bally's like the Padres were. So maybe if they get it done in Arizona, maybe they can get something done here in San Diego. That would be great. That'd be really great. The station, I've got Cox communication, and our TV last year, I think it was 73 if I'm not mistaken, and it was great. I wish they did a little more, have some in-depth interviews with players. I mean, they just kind of showed up for game time. When the game was over, they went dark. You could rerun the game, which they do at least once, if not twice. But man, there's a lot of hours in between the next game. Let's have the Bob Scanlon show or the Mike Pomerantz show where they interview players a little bit. That'd be my suggestion. Or I could do it. I wouldn't mind doing that. Okay. Good stuff today. Okay, last thing. I do want to mention basketball just to keep you up to date. And then I'm going to thank everyone. Again, please subscribe. Follow me on Facebook at John Knetera. And also follow me on X at Coach Knetera44. Okay, real quick. UC San Diego, they went over the weekend against Davis 85-60. They're 22-4, 12-2 in the Big West. They're tied with UC Irvine. They've got 2 games this week. They're on the road Thursday night at Cal Poly, Saturday night. Come on out. You'll see me on the sidelines. I call the ball games with Steve Quist. They take on the University of Hawaii Saturday night at Lion Tree Arena. Aztecs, 17-6, 10-4. Sitting right now 1 game back. They're in tied for third with Colorado State. They're 1 game back of second place. Utah State and 3 games back of first place. New Mexico, they won Saturday night against Boise State 64-47. Magoon Guath, today they named the Mountain West Freshman of the Week. He had 8.6 rebounds and 5 blocks. Congratulations to Wayne McKinney, former Coronado High Islander. Spent his first 3 years at USD, came over to San Diego State this year. He had 10 points and went over the 1,000 point mark combined between USD and his San Diego State career. So congratulations to him. And Nick Boyd, outstanding game Saturday night against Boise, 24 points and just played a heck of a game. Also had 6 rebounds and 2 assists. So the Aztecs play tomorrow night at home against Fresno State. And then they go up to the D. Glenn Smith Spectrum on Saturday and take on Utah State, who had a tough loss yesterday at New Mexico. Utah State, one of the better teams in the Western region this year. And then USD, I had somebody text me the other night, said people, and there weren't a lot of people there, but people were calling for the firing of Steve Lavin. The Toreros the other night got beat 84-61 by USF, who picked up their 21st victory of the year. And the Toreros now 4-24, 1-14 in West Coast Conference play. They don't have a game until Saturday afternoon at 2:00 at the JCP, Jenny Craig Pavilion, against Oregon State. Okay, please subscribe to the channel. I hope you enjoy the program. I always enjoy your comments. Thanks to Bob Chandler. Again, subscribe, like, And follow me on Facebook at John Knetera and on X at Coach Knetera 44. And Friday, folks, don't miss Friday's show. We're going to be revved up, raring to go for the first exhibition game on Friday against the Seattle Mariners. Until then, have a great week, and thanks for tuning into the John Knetera Show on YouTube. Bye-bye.